Welcome to the Women in Wealth podcast, brought to you by Regina McCann-Hess, a certified financial planner with over 2 decades of experience. This show is for professional women who want guidance in working towards their retirement vision in learning, building, planning, striving for your dreams, and putting the work in now so that you can pursue your financial independence. Hello, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, we're going to keep on my favorite topic of Social Security. However, we're going to talk about how it benefits widows and widowers as far as death benefits, essentially. So, we're living longer and, better healthcare means life expectancy, but sometimes it doesn't work for everyone. And sometimes you'll have a spouse that dies before the other spouse. And that's where we're going to focus our attention today. And you may have known that, Social Security was not intended to be your sole retirement income stream. It was expected to complement either pension, 401k, and your other savings. However, it does tend to be one of the bigger items of a retirement conversation about your income during your retirement. So that's where Social Security survivor benefits come into play if you are a widow or widower. So we're going to spend some time here talking about that. And, some of the questions that we're going to talk about are, what are the requirements for receiving survivor benefit? That's one thing, that you're eligible for survivor benefit even if you never worked. You must have been married to your current spouse for at least 9 months before they passed away, and 10 years if you were divorced from them. The other thing is, if you are 60 or older, that is another criteria, or over 50 if you're disabled, or you have a child in care, which means you have a child at home that needs, full care. And that is a description that you can follow up with the Social Security office to determine if your child falls into that line. And it's usually a child who's under 18, but it could potentially be other children. So let's talk about some of the benefits that could be available to you. So the minimum benefit would be about 71.5% of your deceased spouse benefit at age 60. And again, we'll add in, if you're disabled, the age is actually 50. Now, the maximum benefit that you could receive would be limited to what the deceased would have received if they were still alive. So that is something where you need to know what they were receiving on a monthly basis. The gross amount, obviously, because the net amount's probably going to have some taxes taken out, and their Medicare if they were at Medicare age. And then the next thing we talk about are, what are the survivor benefits amounts based on? And the age at which the deceased claimed their Social Security retirement benefits is going to come into play here. If the deceased was receiving disability benefits, the survivor benefit is actually going to be based on the deceased disability benefit. The greater the deceased benefits, then the greater the survivor benefit will be. So there's a whole process that we have to go through to determine what those benefits will be. And then, so some of the things that the survivor benefit percentage will be based on the age you claim the survivor benefit, and the age at which you claim your spousal or retirement benefit does not impact the percentage you receive through the survivor benefit. So, we want to keep that in mind. So we're going to go into how we calculate the survivor benefit next. And in order to receive a survivor benefit, like I mentioned earlier, you have to be at least 60 years old or 50 if you're disabled. I'm probably going to mention that about 3 or 4 more times, so kind of ad nauseum, because that is like the magical number, right? When you receive the benefit, the percentage that you receive is kind of based on your age when you apply for the survivor benefit, and the amount that you receive is also based on the deceased Social Security benefit as well. So there's like 2 little prongs there. And then, what percentage of the deceased benefit can I receive as a surviving spouse? Well, that's going to depend on your age when you apply for the survivor benefit. The minimum that you can receive is about 71.5% of the deceased full retirement benefit if you're, again, age 60 or older, or 50 if you're disabled, when you claim that survivor benefit. Now, the maximum you can receive as a surviving spouse is up to 100% of the deceased's benefit. Now, if you are a person who has been in the workforce, you may be able to receive an amount that equals the greater of the survivor benefit or your own retirement benefit. So here's the deal. So I mentioned earlier that the amount or percentage that you could receive is 71.5% and the maximum is 100%. Well, obviously that depends on the age that you start to take that. So at the earliest that you could take, like we said, what's that magic age? 60. So that's where you're only going to get about 71.5% of the benefit. And then it goes up for each year, it goes up a little bit. So at 61, it's full retirement age. Well, we're just going to assume your full retirement age is 67 because there's some people who are 66 in a couple months or 66 in 8 months. And that's just going to be very tedious to go through. So let's just assume everyone's full retirement age is 67. So if you're 61 years old and you're turning that benefit on, it's 75.6%. We're going to jump to 63. Your survivor benefit would go up to 83.7%. 65, you would be at 91.9%. And at 66, you're just shy, right? It's 95.9%. And of course, if your full retirement age is age 67, then that's where you get that 100% survivor. Now, just a tagline, full retirement age for senior benefit is age 66 for anyone born in 1945 to 1956. So it increases by 2 months for every year born from 1957 to 1961. So full retirement survivor benefits is the age of 67 for anyone born after 1962. So again, we're just assuming people are 67, but that little caveat's in there if you want to do the mental gymnastics on that or the mathematic gymnastics on that, go have fun with it. But it's just a general guideline for helping you trying to have a thought pattern before you call the Social Security office or you call your financial advisor to have a conversation about this. And no joke, this is not something, that's rare, but it's not something we deal with every single day. And I feel like I'm pretty well educated on Social Security, but I always do have to look this up when I run into this situation myself, because it's a couple times a year. And we always want to make sure we have the right information to give you, or at least guide you, and then calling the Social Security office, possibly together, or, you make an appointment and go in the Social Security office to take it the next step further. But a little bit of education before you go in there is a good thing. Although I know the Social Security office that my clients have gone into several different Social Security offices, and they've gotten great advice from the people who work there. So I think it's a pretty good office. So a couple questions people ask are, can I receive the maximum survivor benefit even if I receive a reduced spousal or retirement benefit? So the answer is actually yes. Even if you're receiving a reduced retirement or spousal benefit, you're still eligible for the maximum survivor benefit if you are full retirement age or older when you apply for the survivor benefit. So if you're 62, that's not your full retirement age. If you wait till 67, that's the full retirement age where you can get the full survivor benefit. So after your spouse passes away, you are eligible for an amount that equals the greater of your retirement benefit or the survivor benefit of your spouse. So an example would be Kelly applied for Social Security at age 62. She was receiving a reduced spousal benefit at that time. Kelly's now 67 and her spouse recently passed away. Now, because Kelly's now at full retirement age, she is going to apply for the survivor benefit, and now she will be eligible for 100% of the deceased spouse's retirement benefit. So there is a little bit of change there for her situation as a result of that. One of the other questions we get is, will I automatically receive the survivor benefit? And it kind of depends. You have to apply for the survivor benefit if you're not already receiving a Social Security benefit, or if you're receiving a retirement benefit or disability benefit on your own record. So you kind of have to reach out, right? If you're receiving a spousal benefit off your spouse, the Social Security Administration will automatically convert you to a survivor benefit upon notification of the death. And and you are full retirement age or older. And the second thing is under full retirement age and did not pay into the system for 40 quarters. Now, if you're under full retirement age and receiving spousal benefit and you also paid into Social Security for 40 quarters, or you're receiving Social Security disability benefits, you may have to do additional paperwork if you want to start receiving the, survivor benefit. Now, I will tell you that before your family even knows, Social Security will probably know that your loved one has died. Funeral homes, I believe, are the ones who reach out to Social Security, and I cannot tell you how quickly Social Security reacts to that information. It will take back this month's Social Security payment into your deceased spouse's bank account, and then they will process, whatever you need them to process. But here's the thing. The Social Security is informed by the funeral homes. However, we're in line with, like they said, if you're not already receiving a benefit, Social Security doesn't marry you up and say, oh, we have to go reach out to the wife and help her out. No, that's something you have to do on your own or with an advisor who can help you do that. Okay, so now we're going to go over a couple other questions or comments, FAQs, whatever you want to call them. So my spouse claimed Social Security before they passed away. How is the survivor benefit calculated? So the survivor benefit is based on how old the deceased was when they claimed their retirement benefit. So the greater the deceased retirement benefit, the greater the survivor benefit. Obviously, if they have a really high Social Security benefit and you have a low Social Security benefit, that's kind of true you up a little bit. So that's a good option there. If the deceased claimed their retirement benefit before their full retirement age, the maximum survivor benefit is limited to the greater of what the deceased was receiving at death or 82.5% of the deceased full retirement benefit. So this is where it kind of bites you in the butt if you take your Social Security early or before your full retirement age. It has a big impact, not just on your own income stream, it has an impact on your spouse's income stream. And especially if it's what we call the breadwinner spouse. The breadwinner spouse should definitely be the one who does not take Social Security until at least full retirement age or maybe even 70, because then you get a little bit more each year and then it helps the remaining spouse. So there's my little soapbox again. I can't help myself when we talk about taking Social Security early, but you see the impact of it, right? It decreases the survivor benefit, and that's still it might be more than what you're getting as a spousal benefit, but it's still has a permanent decrease on the survivor benefit. So something to keep in mind. Okay, so the other thing is if the deceased claimed their retirement benefit at or after full retirement age, which is what we want, the survivor benefit is based on the amount the deceased was receiving at death. Now, the percentage you receive as a surviving spouse is based on your own age when you claim the survivor benefit. So again, keep track of how old you are when you're claiming that Social Security survivor benefit. If he or she passes away at 60, just because you can claim that survivor benefit may not mean that you should. You really want to talk to somebody about this before you go and take some action. Lastly, there is that if the deceased was receiving Social Security disability benefits, the survivor benefit is based on what the deceased was receiving at the time of death. Now we're going to kind of put that into context, okay? So we're going to do a hypothetical survivor benefit based on the deceased claiming age. So the spouse that just passed away, and we're going to make him a he, sorry, because usually the guy dies first. So assuming he was age 62 when he started his Social Security benefits, we're going to assume that would be about $23,000 a year. If he put it off and did not start his Social Security benefit until full retirement age, which again, we like 67 because it's even, round, all that fun stuff, none of the extra months in there, then it's $27,500. Now, again, his full retirement age could have been 66 and 8 months. We're just doing it as an example. And then had he waited till he was 70 to start his benefits, then the annual amount would have been $34,000 a year. So you can see the difference is huge in taking it early, $23,000 a year, versus waiting till 70 at $34,000 a year. That's a big discrepancy. But, maybe you can't wait till you're 70, but, it's still a $3,500 difference a year for the rest of your life by waiting until your full retirement age. So that's it's something to really keep in mind when you're discussing about when to turn your Social Security on. All right, so what if my spouse didn't claim Social Security before they passed away? How is the survivor benefit calculated? Well, it kind of depends on whether your spouse passed away before or after their full retirement age. So if your spouse passed away before their full retirement age, the survivor benefit is based on what the deceased would have received as a retirement benefit at full retirement age. So the percentage you receive is based on your age when you claim the survivor benefit. Again, keep track of, am I taking it before or at that full retirement age, or even after? Also, if your spouse passed away after or after the full retirement age, the survivor benefit is based on what the deceased would have received at the date of their death. So the percentage you receive is based on your age when you claim the survivor benefit, also based on, what your spouse would have received. So hypothetical example here would be Ray passed away at age 68 without claiming his retirement benefits. So the survivor benefit for his spouse would be based on Ray would have received if he had claimed at age 68. So a little bit more than the full retirement age. So there you go. This is a question I get all the time. And sometimes people don't even ask the question. They just assume they can. Can I receive both my retirement benefit and my survivor benefit? Nope. Cannot double dip. Can't do it. Can't do it. You can do one or the other. You can't do both. What if I remarry? Oh, this is actually very, very important to know. So if you remarry before you turn 60, you forfeit the survivor benefit of your deceased spouse. So if you remarry at or after age 60, you retain the survivor benefit of your deceased spouse. So in that case, you'll receive the greater of your retirement benefit, the survivor benefit of your deceased spouse, or the spousal/survivor benefit of your current spouse. What? A lot of options there. So there's a lot of definitely options there in Social Security for the spousal surviving spouse benefits. Another question I get is, can I start my retirement benefit and then switch to the survivor benefit? And, what about vice versa? So in some cases, a surviving spouse may start with one benefit and then eventually switch to another. So if, let's say you might be able to start with a reduced survivor benefit like we said, as early as age 60, and then switch to your own retirement benefit at any time between age 62 and age 70. You may also be able to start your reduced retirement benefit as early as age 62 and then switch to the retirement benefit. You want to definitely talk to somebody, Social Security representative or your financial advisor about this before signing any forms or deciding to do it, because there are some tricks to this. And again, this is something that even though I try to be as well educated about Social Security, this is even something I have to look up every single time to make sure I'm not treading on a landmine here and giving the wrong advice. So I double check. I even reach out to my center of influence to make sure I'm right with this stuff. So if you don't, do this every day, you definitely want to reach out to somebody at Social Security or your financial advisor before trying to muddle through it by yourself. Here's the other thing, especially this kind of goes back to taking a benefit early. We're going to talk about working and receiving the survivor benefit. So can I work and can I receive the survivor benefit? Well, there's earnings limitations that apply to Social Security benefits before your full retirement age. So if you continue to work and you're under your full retirement age, which we said was approximately 67, and you earn more than $23,400 in 2025, your retirement benefit as well as the survivor benefit may be temporarily withheld. So after you reach full retirement age, you can earn as much as you want and they're not going to withhold anything. So that magic number of $23,400 a year, they're going to withhold, if you make more than that while you're taking a benefit, they're going to withhold $1 for every $2 above that earnings limit. So be very, very careful. the other thing is, if you are turning your full retirement age this year, 2025, you can make up to $62,160. However, after you hit that threshold, up until you reach your full retirement age, they're going to withhold $1 for every $3 of earnings above that limit. So you're kind of giving money back. So that's another reason why not to turn that benefit on, unless obviously it's a dire situation you need to. But if you're able to not turn it on to your full retirement age, it avoids having to give that money back, or that benefit back, I should say. Okay, so what if I worked in a government position that did not pay into Social Security? So if you did work in that kind of a position and your spouse worked in the private sector and, paid into Social Security, the survivor benefit may be reduced by about 2/3 of your government pension. So that's something that you do need to dig into a little bit deeper. Again, you may want to call somebody at the Social Security office and have them walk you through that. And then, can I receive the survivor benefit even if I never worked? Yeah. If you never worked, you've been married and you fall into all those rules, you can receive a survivor benefit. Now, what if the deceased received a military pension? Survivor benefits may affect benefits payable under the Department of Defense survivor benefit plan. So again, you want to check with the Department of Defense or your military retirement advisor for that, to learn a little bit more about that. So, a lot of information. And I know this is the third education and topic in a row that was on Social Security. First, we did Social Security top 10 tips. Then we did Social Security with divorce. And this time we're doing Social Security survivor benefits. It's a really, really important topic. And, not enough people know as much about Social Security as they should, because like we said, it's a bigger part of your retirement income stream than most people think. So our action item is educate yourself a little bit more about this before you pull the trigger. I can't ask you enough to do that. You have my podcasts, my videos. You can Google podcasts on Social Security. I mean, they might make you sleepy, but, get a little caffeine in you, do it early in the morning, take small doses, but it is very, very good information. And with that, I want to thank you for joining me. I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. My website is forgewealth.com. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Forge Wealth, and LinkedIn's Regina McCann-Hess. Go make it a great day. The only other thing, I'm going to do like a little compliance thing here. Again, the information in this podcast is educational and general in nature. It does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it's not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. And to determine which strategies or investments that may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision. And we want to thank MFS Fund Distributors. We use their material for preparing and speaking on this podcast. They have some great educational pieces for us advisors. And then also, securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice is offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. MFS Fund Distributors, Private Advisor Group, and Forge Wealth Management are all separate entities from LPL Financial and from themselves. Our show guests and their companies are not affiliated with nor endorsed by LPL Financial, Private Advisor Group, or Forge Wealth Management. And with that, I bid you a good day. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Women in Wealth podcast. You can watch the founder's video I created for you to learn more about me and how I can guide you towards your financial independence at www.forgewealth.com. The information in this podcast is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific, individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, and SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Forge Wealth Management are separate entities from the LPL Financial. Our show guests and their companies are not affiliated with nor endorsed by LPL Financial, Private Advisor Group, or Forge Wealth Management.